Hey, everybody, welcome to episode 21 of the Giant Zone, where tonight you have your host, Steve the Banker.
What's going on, everybody?
And you also have yours truly, Fly Guy Carl. But tonight, Fly Guy Carl is doing a little New York Rangers tribute. So for those of you that know me on Twitter, I got my little Mark Messier signed hat going on. For those of you that know me on Twitter that follow the Rangers, let's go. Big one tomorrow, guys. Very, very big one tomorrow night. Very happy with where this team is at, what they've accomplished, but work to still be done here. And I'm not giving up on this team yet. I want to keep enjoying this run, having some fun with it, and working, interacting with you guys and all my friends on Twitter about this. So let's keep it going, guys. And now that that's out of the way, we're also joined tonight by our follower, Brian. Brian, you want to say hello to everybody?
Hello, everybody out there in podcast land, YouTube land, and glad to be here with you guys for sure.
So Brian's been a very good, steady follower of us on Twitter and of the show. And Brian's always got, when he follows up on Giants tweets, he's got very, very knowledgeable and pointed tweets. And that's kind of what attracted us to having him on the show. We thought he'd be a great guest and add some good insight. So, Brian, we're really, really happy to have you. Thank you for giving us the time tonight and sharing the show with us tonight.
Absolutely happy to do it. I've looked forward to this for a long time. So,
Brian, give us a little background about yourself, how you became a Giants fan, and just your feelings about them.
Absolutely. Well, I live in the Asheville, North Carolina area now. I've moved around a lot for work. My story is going to be an unusual story when it comes to my Giant fandom. So you guys are going to laugh at this. So I've actually been a New England Patriots fan since the 70s.
I'm not laughing, Brian.
Stanley Morgan and Steve Grogan, if you're old enough to remember those names.
Yeah.
So Russ Francis. So I lived in Massachusetts, in the Boston area for a while when I was a little kid, and we moved south down to Tennessee, and then ultimately I grew up in Tennessee. And so but I'm also a Duke graduate. So I graduated from Duke University, class of 1990, and y'all drafted my quarterback. David Cutcliffe kind of rescued our program from the wilderness there. Steve Spurrier was actually the Duke football coach when I was in school. So we had David Cutcliffe, and then of course he brought us back. We started putting some people in the league as we started to improve the program, and then one of those, of course, was Daniel Jones. So the night, that infamous night or famous night of in 2019 when his name was called. I became a Giants fan, and so that's kind of how I landed here. It may sound, I have to say, Carl, the Giant fan base has been very welcoming to me when I tell my story. I get a few haters out there. Hey, you can't be a Giants fan and a Patriot fan, but for the most part, they've been very, very welcoming. They understand where I'm coming from, and and I've just been, it's not just about the offense for me. I was, calling. Talking to another podcaster a couple of weeks ago, bitching about the punting game. That we need to get better at punting. So yeah, I'm all in terms of the team and wanting them to do well. And I'm actually headed to the Titans game with my son.
Yes.
So I'm going to be there in person. That'll be my first Giant game ever. So
Wow.
Brian, Carl, I don't mean to interrupt, but Brian, can I ask you a quick follow-up question on what you just said about going to Duke and graduating in 91? So we know you went to Duke. We know you're a smart guy. So if you graduated in 91, then did you overlap with Dave Brown, who we don't love to bring up his name? Those weren't great memories, his time with the Giants, if we're all being honest with ourselves, we all know that. But he went to Duke, he was drafted by the Giants, and I think he went there from like 88 to, I always forget when he graduated, when we drafted him.
Yeah, I graduated in 1990. So yeah, he was on campus when I was there. Yeah, I mean, Anthony Dilweg was kind of the best quarterback that was there. Steve Sladen was starting initially back when I was a sophomore, and then it was Dave Brown was in there as well. Yeah, so I did overlap with him.
So real quick before you continue with your story, and I want you to continue, and I want Carl to finish up with just any quick 2-second thoughts on Dave Brown when he was there and what it was like? Did you have any interaction with him? What did people think of him? Just out of curiosity.
I didn't have any interaction with him directly, but I will say that, that was the airball period with Steve Spurrier. So, I mean, when he arrived, the program was like, I think we were like 4-7 right before he arrived. And then he just came in cocky, throwing the ball all over the place, trick plays here and there. Just, great quotes, one-liners in the post game. And, you could just, there was just an energy there. So in general, the team did very well under all three quarterbacks that he was there for, and actually what was a co-ACC champion his my senior year. We were actually co-ACC champions with Clemson. We beat Clemson actually in the last game. I remember storming the field. So so it was just a good time. Unfortunately, my senior year, after we did that, they went to a bowl game, and then he took the Florida job. So that was the end of that for a while.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
Sorry, Carl.
Brian, do you have any special game day traditions or any traditions related to the Giants that you could share with us?
Well, I have more. I'm going to give you more reasons to laugh at me.
We like that.
Being in North Carolina, I'm not in network, right? I'm not in a natural coverage area, and I don't have DirecTV. I used to have DirecTV, and I don't. But I don't have access to Sunday Ticket. So unless I'm going to head to a sports bar, which is not always practical with young kids at home, and you want to get a happy wife, happy life sort of thing. So so what I end up doing a lot is I'll listen to the game on Sirius XM satellite radio. So I'll listen to Carl and Bob Papa, listen to the game. I'll have my phone on me, so I'll be following the Twitter feeds and the tweet storms from the beat writers and the other fans on there, kind of reacting to the plays. And then, of course, a lot of the times these people, they post videos, during the game, like literally like 2 plays later, they'll post a video of a long Daniel Jones pass, touchdown or whatever. So I'll get to watch that. And then after the game, I'll listen to post-game podcasts, and I actually subscribe to NFL Game Pass. So for the year, so I can watch the broadcast later, so I can watch the game as it was broadcast, so to kind of get the feel of what went on. But, that's kind of the world I live in right now. It's not ideal. You want to be able to get that live reaction. Sometimes we are able to get the sports bars, and then of course you have the national telecast, Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, so you can, and then I guess we get a Thursday night at Thanksgiving Day, right? So, so I'll be able to watch some of those live, but that's my ritual. So it's unusual, but we make it work.
Can you stream the games?
You can. There are some bootleg sites you can get out. Some people use VPN to kind of be able to get in and pretend that you live in the tri-state area. I always am wary about that because, there's a lot of malware and spam that gets viruses that gets posted on those sites. And so, and I don't want some FBI agent to show up at my door some, 3 years in the future, right? So, I try to stay away from that scene. Although I know people who are knee deep in that kind of stuff.
Sure. All right. So, well, thank you for that. Tough to follow that.
I told you I'd give you some reasons to laugh at me.
But so let's get into some of your questions here, Brian. I know you got some questions for us. So why don't you take us through your questions? Let's start with number one for you.
Well, I guess, so with the news that Andrew Thomas is still, walking around with a noticeable limp, right? Which is expected. He had, off-season surgery on that ankle, which has been giving him problems repeatedly. Hopefully, they kind of finally resolve whatever the issue was. But now I know we have a few months left until fall camp, but then, I'd like to get a sense from the team as to how confident, you are that we'll start the season, whatever happens with Thomas and this Zentu or whatever this guy's name is that's doing with the ones and OTAs, and we have a lot of new faces there. Lemieux getting a lot of reps. So, I mean, based on what you know now, how confident are you they will have at least a competent, competitive showing from the offensive line when we roll it out there in September?
Steve, this is your baby. So why don't you start with this?
So great question. Thank you, Brian. Listen, obviously we don't have any inside sources, and hopefully one day we'll have some good ones, but we're just not at that point. And so I'm in the same boat as you and Carl and everyone else. Listen, Andrew Thomas gave a great interview on one of the other big podcasts. We're all fans of each other, and we listen to a lot of each other's podcast. And he was on Talking Giants 3 weeks ago, and they asked him that question. He said, "I'll be ready." He, obviously, I think he would have given a slightly different answer. I watched and listened the entire time, and he was unafraid. Like, they asked him about PFF and do you watch PFF stats? That same question was posed to Shane Lemieux recently, and some of these other, oh no, I don't pay attention to that. But Andrew Thomas said, yeah, I do. I look at it. I want to know. And, I have people that help me grade myself. So he's definitely a little bit more of a straight shooter, I think, than most NFL players are. And he just like shook it off like, yeah, I'm going to be ready. Mm-hmm. My understanding is it was like a scope. They had to clean some stuff out, the same exact issues that were causing him to miss games and have major pain. I think the good news is twofold. One, it looks like Shane Lemieux is in the lead of that. I wasn't so sure leading up to the draft that was going to happen. His rookie year was a disaster as a pass pro. He was like a turnstile, but he was great as a run protector. And he did have great chemistry. If you look at the breakdowns of the plays with him and Thomas next to each other, the start of camp last year, he looked phenomenal. All the talk was how he was going to improve. So what I'm trying to say is, if it was a brand new left guard starting next to him, I'd be a little bit more concerned, but they had chemistry. Granted, it's been a year, but there was real chemistry between those two guys. So right. If he wins, now, if he doesn't win, I don't know that the rookie's going to get in there at the beginning. It's going to be one of the other veterans. So, and then part two of that is Andrew Thomas progressed so much last year. He knows what he had to improve on. He made those improvements. We all saw it before our eyes. And unfortunately, he's been hurt before. So I think the normal concern would be, anytime you have a young player, first time getting injured, they're going to try to rush back. They're not going to know how to prep when they finally are ready to come back. He's been through this, unfortunately for us. But then when he came back, he played for a long stretch, and he's one of those kids that plays through pain. So I don't want to rush him back. The smoke signals I see from Shane and Dable is that he'll be fine. They're just taking precaution, like we all see about all these guys wearing the red jersey in the OTAs. So of all the things to be concerned about, I'm not saying it's not a really great question. I'm not so concerned about Andrew. Now, if this is halfway through training camp, 2/3 of the way through, our preseason schedule, and he's still not playing, then I'm going to be worried.
So Steve kind of stole my thunder here, in the fact that he didn't have a major procedure done. And that's, so I tend to agree that they're kind of just moving him or bringing him back slowly. They're being cautious. And to Steve's point, look, this is his, third year in the league now. He knows what it takes to be ready. He understands it now. I think he'll be fine. You guys both also touched on the fact that Shane Lemieux is probably going to win that left guard position. At least early indications are he looks great. And I'm happy with that. Now, they did sign some free agents as they do have some veteran backups where if, let's say, Lemieux can't, you got Max Garcia they have there. Yeah. I don't think Max Garcia is a long-term fix there, but I do think that Lemieux is going to win that. You also have the rookie, Joshua Ezeudu. He may need a year to learn the pro game. But again, they drafted him highly. He seems to have the tools. Haven't heard how he's been performing much, but that's okay. But to answer your question directly, I do think Andrew Thomas is going to be there. And I think that starting line is going to be Thomas, Lemieux, Feliciano, and then you're going to have Glowinski and then Neal.
Yeah.
On paper, I'll go to battle with that. That's the best offensive line we've had in quite a while. So,
yeah,
competent. Yeah, I think we're going to have a competent line. I think we're going to have a competitive line. I don't think they're going to get pushed around like the lines we've seen in recent years have. So I'm fairly confident we're going to have a good offensive line and a good showing out of them. What do you think, Brian?
Yeah, I agree. You know, I think almost anything would be an upgrade over Nate Solder. You know, and you couldn't call him a turnstile because turnstiles actually make make contact every time.
Yeah.
But you know, yeah, I think it's gonna be good. And that's gonna help DJ obviously, right? You know, in terms of, you know, having the offense look functional and prioritize scoring points. So yeah, even just being serviceable would be a significant upgrade over what we dealt with.
And let just one final thought, guys, and let's think about what is he missing? What has he been missing? It's important that he's there. It's important that guys build camaraderie. It's important that guys get the mental reps, right? And the walkthroughs of the new installs that they're now exposed to, this new offense and the schemes, and talking through, okay, what do you do in this situation? Wink just had the defense do this. Now, what would you do in a real game? But at the end of the day, it's just, there's no run block. There's no blocking. They're not wearing pads. It's all pass pro scenarios. I mean, he's one of our cornerstone players. So you don't want him to miss, but he's one of our cornerstone players also in terms of skill. Like if the guy's going to miss, he's probably one of the few, very, very few that I'm like, all right, you know, let's get him back close to the 100% before we see him out there. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I also think, to that point, I also think that given his importance and the way he's developed, that if they felt that he wasn't ready, he wouldn't even be on the field. I think they would have held him back anyway. So I think they're okay with where he's at. I think they're good with his medicals. He'll be fine. He'll be fine. I'm not worried. Now, if he turns an ankle, you know, this week or, you know, in camp, I'm going to be concerned. But, you know, right now, my feeling is they'll be fine.
Well, he's not doing anything. Josh Ozudu's been playing left tackle snaps in the
Yeah. So,
which is actually a value add in itself, right? Because
Exactly.
he's getting reps with the ones, and he's you know, getting his feet wet and having to know the calls and the schemes and all that stuff. So that's value add. That experience is going to collect interest between now and kickoff.
it's a good point. What else do you have for us, Brian?
So my next question was, so I keep seeing online these demands from Giant fans that, you know, in order to retain Daniel Jones, you know, I need 35 plus touchdowns and I need 4,500 yards passing, you know, in order to, you know, retain this guy. It's sort of like draconian. And I get it to a point, right? I mean, you know, I mean, stats, you know, there is a measuring stick that people use for quarterbacks. You know, I sometimes I wonder if these guys, you know, okay, so we're going to be passing on every down, you know, inside the red zone. Are we gonna, you know, not count a 4-yard touchdown run because you know, Daniel didn't throw it across the end zone, across the goal line? It just seems kind of arbitrary. So, you know, I'd like to get your take on kind of, you know, you know, but maybe I'm missing something. You know, is there, you know, do you have in mind a statistical aspirations or requirements that you need to see out of him to sort of consider after the season? Hey, we're going to retain this guy either for franchise tag or sign him to a new deal. I'd just be interested in your thoughts on that before I give you mine.
So, Steve, I'll start with this one. You know, we've been asked that question a few times on a couple previous shows, Brian, and I don't want to get bogged down in stats because, and I'm going to stick to my guns here, and I've been saying it all along, it's a cumulative equation. They're not going to base this on stats, all right? Again, the owner came out and said, we failed him. So the owner has taken responsibility for some of his failures, and he hasn't been great. He's made his share of mistakes. I want to be very clear about that.
Sure.
They got him a new coach. They got him a GM. So, okay. Now, the Giants, they went out and they got extra weapons for him in the draft. Okay. You got an offensive line. They rebuilt the offensive line in front of them. You've got weapons. So they're doing what they need to do. I mean, stats, I'm going to turn this around and ask a question. So let's say he throws for 15 touchdowns let's say 2,500 to 3,000 yards, okay? But they win 8, 9, 10 games somehow with that, okay? His interceptions are down. So the offense now looks competent. They look like they can move the ball effectively. He can lead it. He can keep them together. They play together and they're cohesive as a unit with him under center. Would you not tag him if you get those results?
Sure.
That's exactly my point. So when I say this is cumulative, did I say that right? Cumulative. I always have trouble with that word.
You said it right.
So when I say that, look, he can throw for 25, 30 touchdowns, 3,500 yards, 4,000 yards, and they go 3-13. Is he going to get tagged? Probably not.
Probably not.
Exactly my point. So I'm not going to play the stats game. I'm going to stick to my guns, what I've been saying all along. If he shows that he can move this offense, and this offense shows that they're responding to him, then that will be good enough to take him. It's going to come down to wins, not stats. Just my 2 cents. Steve?
I agree with what you're saying, Carl. And Brian, that's like a good segue. I'm glad I went second to where stats matter or don't matter in this argument. I think it's all about changing this offense to becoming more explosive. And one thing I think we learned through the draft, before the draft, during the draft, and after the draft, is that these guys have a vision. We've talked about it over and over. They've talked about it in interviews over and over. Smart, tough, dependable. Like they know what type of player they want. They know what type of players they need to play the offenses and defenses they want to run. They know what type of coaches they need to teach those and to teach the skills that they have visions and they know how to execute. So I think the point is, I think they have a vision of what they want out of a quarterback for their team. One thing that I've gravitated to that they've said is they don't want Josh Allen. They want Daniel Jones to be the best version of Daniel that he can be. Right. Now, it's not up to them to do that, though. That's up to Daniel, right? What's up to them is to support him. John Mara ownership have said we haven't supported him. We know all that. So it's all about getting the coaches, Shea Tierney, Kafka, all these guys around him, Davis Webb, who's like a player coach. They've set it up. It's all set up. So I think they're going to do 2 things at the end of the season. The calculus will be 2 things. Number one, is he a top 15 quarterback, or is he at least ascending to become that? And hold on to that, what I just said, because I'm going to finish that thought. And then number 2, what are the options in the draft, free agency, or trade if he's not, or if he's kind of borderline? Because I think there's 3 things that could happen, right? He could blow us away and shock us and surprise us. That's a good problem to have. Listen, franchise tag the guy. Number 2, he's kind of like, maybe he's top 15. He's exceeded a lot of fans' expectations, but he's not. He may never take us to a Super Bowl, but man, look at the improvement he showed. Probably going to franchise tag him. Or unfortunately, doesn't do any of those 2. And I think that's why they didn't pick up the 5th-year option. And they're going to move on from. What gives these guys confidence is they know how to develop a quarterback. They've done it before. They've done it multiple times in multiple places. And they understand team construction, which everyone always hears me talk about. They understand to not sacrifice cap flexibility. So that's why they didn't sign him to a 5th year. That's why I think they do know what they want to see out of him. Going back to that first thing, and I'll finish that thought. I have every quarterback in the NFL statistically printed out here in front of me from last season. I have them all ranked top to bottom in terms of yards passing, but then I also have their QBR rating. So we can look at anything individually. But if I said to you, I think it's fair to expect this kid to become a top 15 quarterback, you might say, Steven, that's tough though. I mean, think about, hold on a minute. Tom Brady led the league in passing, then Justin Herbert, Matt Stafford, Patrick Mahomes. These are all the names that we've heard, right? Yeah. No surprises. Derek Carr, I'm not the biggest fan of, but you know what? He was 5th in the league in yards passing. He was not in the top 12 or 13 in terms of QBR rating, because again, that goes back to, I don't think he's a top 10 quarterback. Then you got Joe Burrow. Surprise, he was a little further down, but the guy went to the Super Bowl. Dak Prescott, Josh Allen, Kirk Cousins, and Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers was number 1 in the NFL last year in QBR rating. but he was 10th in the league in yards passing. Now you start getting into that next group of 5. Matt Ryan, who just got traded, guys. He's on the back end of his career. Jimmy Garoppolo, who people think is going to get traded. So he's not your franchise quarterback. He's been traded once already, may get traded now a second time. Mac Jones, who we all love, amazing, did phenomenal.
Big upside. Yeah.
Kyler Murray, who people were wondering, is he on the outs? But now it looks like he's mending that relationship. But there's some concerns there in Arizona. We all know that. And then Ben Roethlisberger, who just had to retire. The guy couldn't move. Hall of Famer, all-time great. And once you get out of that top 15, who's next? Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill is done this year. If he doesn't take them to the promised land, the odds are he's gone. They drafted a quarterback. He's 37 years old last year. The guy had a devastating final game in the playoffs. People are not a fan. And then Trevor Lawrence, and then Carson Wentz, who was traded. So think of the names that Taylor Heineke, Jared Goff, Jalen Hurts.
Yes.
That next group from 16 to 20. Am I being unreasonable? Is it so unreasonable to say he's so when we talk about, so to answer your question, when we talk about stats, I only think it matters to the extent that you say, well, who are his peers in that group? If his peers are top 10, oh my God, what type of stats is he going to need? Guys, relax. If he ends up doing 3,800 yards passing and, 25 touchdowns to 12 interceptions, he's in that next tier of 10 to 17.
Right.
You got a quarterback now. Now, are they going to look at him and say he's then going to move into the top 10 eventually and maybe take his promised land? They may not. We may not see that as fans, but then you franchise tag him and then you punt a year. So I think I understand the concern and frustration that there's a lot of fans out there that are talking statistics. I know we talked statistics recently, but I like to think it's within the context of saying what neighborhood would he be in? That's why I think it's important.
And I think that's
in today's NFL.
Yeah, and that's a very reasoned analysis and a reasonable analysis. And I think that to your point about context, and this is where the problem I have with these people that come at me on Twitter with how many touchdown passes he has. I mean, I know you've talked on this podcast about stats with context with regards to scheme. Previous scheme did not prioritize long, basically it was 3 plays to get a first down, right? And station to station. For 2 years, we dealt with that, right? The curl routes, the short stick routes. Everything had to go perfectly in order for us to get into the end zone. Had to be perfect, almost perfect. And, so I think, when you're living on a steady diet of short curl and stick routes that the DBs learned to sit on 2 years ago, that becomes, that it's just untenable that you're going to sit there and say you're going to throw for, 35 touchdowns in that circumstance. It's not going to happen. And I think it's a matter of context. I do think, and you guys probably saw this on Twitter, they mentioned that Dable, when he arrived at Giants headquarters, he sat down and he watched every Daniel Jones play for all of his time in the NFL, all of his time at Duke, and went back to his huddle tape back when he was in the recruiting system back before he was at Charlotte Latin. Watched every play go on through. So and I'm sure that all of the staff did the same thing. That wasn't just him in the room. I think Kafka and Tierney also did this as well. And so, I think I'm confident based on what your point, Steve, about, the quarterbacks that they've worked with and had success in multiple circumstances, multiple players, that, I'm going to trust that they know how to get the best out of Daniel and maximize his input into the offense and maximize his productivity.
And he's proven he's got the tools. Is he perfect? No. Is there a perfect quarterback out there? No. But he's got the tools. It's can he bring it together? Have they given him everything he needs to help bring it together? So, if it comes together, I think there's still a shot that we have the guy. Maybe we didn't have the supporting cast to help him be the guy, but I still think there's an outside chance that we have the guy. I'm not ready to throw in the towel yet, but yeah, that may come back to bite me, and I'll own that. But
Well, I'll own it too, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes I get accused of being a Daniel Jones shill for obvious reasons,
Right.
given my history, right? But I'm not afraid to call a spade. I mean that I had my head in my hands at the Kansas City game, right? So just some of the shit can't. Sorry, or some of this stuff can't happen. It's just got to clean up stuff and not have stupid plays, and avoid the sort of horrific moments that can cause you to lose games, right?
Okay.
So I
What
will
else?
give you a little bit before we leave this specific question. I will give you a little tidbit. I really think that uh, they're going to prioritize Daniel going to the tight end. Daniel Jones going back to his Duke days. If you watch the YouTube videos and stuff, replays, there was just one tight end, Daniel Helm. That was his safety valve, safety blanket, and actually not even as a check down, just like was a primary read on a lot of the plays that they ran. He loved going to the tight end, and so and Garrett, for whatever reason, didn't prioritize going to the tight end a lot. And when he did, obviously we had some challenges there in terms of drops and catch the ball and stuff. But if this Ellinger kid, it performs as advertised, is what we're hearing from OTAs, then I suspect you're going to see a lot of production from that tight end connection.
Another weapon.
Yeah.
Another
Yeah.
weapon.
Yeah.
Right.
I think Caden Smith could have been that last year, but we never found out because he got hurt. And you saw flashes of that in 2019.
Yep.
Already, right? But it just didn't work out because of he couldn't physically do it.
Right. What else do you have for us, Brian?
So my last question that I had for you guys is, okay, so we're in a time warp here. You guys woke up as the new you're Kafka. And so you're at the Titans game. You got a chance to call the first 3 plays of the season. So I want to know what's based on what you know now. What are you calling their first 3 plays? Because a lot of times, probably with the Giants too, their first few plays are going to be scripted, just to kind of see the flow of the game, right? So what are your first 3 plays out of the gate here this season?
Go ahead, Coach Steve. You could start with this one.
You sure?
You're not inspiring confidence.
I thought this was a fun question, and but
Yeah.
I'm going to let you go with this one, Steve.
Yeah, I have a lot to say on this. That's why I said this is the type of question, Brian, thank you, that gets me jazzed up. I played football when I was younger, like a lot of our listeners and people here, and I still look at it as a former player, even though that was like a couple of decades ago, right? Like you don't lose that. And I watch the offensive line, I watch the defensive line during games, and to me, this first game is going to be about that. Let me just say this to put context. I've been making a comment for a number of weeks now on our shows that in my heart of hearts, and I think these guys they've done their installs, but they're going to ease into the playbook, right? They're going to do a lot of running. When Daboll was in Buffalo, that was one of the big criticisms the last 2 years of him as offensive coordinator, was that a lot of fans were like, and podcasters talk about that. If you ever listen to Buffalo podcasters, they say he ran too much, and then he kind of pivoted, and Josh Allen got more confidence, and he just opened it up, right? And that was even after they had Stephon Diggs. I think they're going to do that. I think they're going to establish the run. Evan Neal is a beast in the run game. You got Glowinski, one of the better run blocking guards. So, and if we can get Shane Lemieux back, who run blocking was his forte, it was the pass pro that was the issue, with Thomas on the left side. And now we have a nice, tough as nails center. We had that in Gates, but that was all we had. And unfortunately, hopefully he makes it back. I think if you can establish the run, it will give confidence to the line. It'll keep Daniel Jones upright. Then they can do his RPO. It gives them options. Ultimately, we want to spread everything out, right? My concern is Vrabel is old school, and what he and the general manager have built there. In 2020, they were number 24 in team defense in the NFL. Well, last year they were number 6. Mm-hmm. They were the 6th best defense. So where am I going with this? In order to tell you what 3 plays I'm going to call, I needed to understand who they are, because normally this is something I think we would have done leading up to the game. A lot can happen between now and then. Players can get hurt, whatever. Rookies can outperform, and you find out Tennessee's going to start this kid. But what do we know about them? They were number 6 in 2021 in defense. They had the second best run defense behind the Ravens in the NFL. So how does that go with what I just said about what I think we should do in the beginning of the season? I was like, and we talked about it, and we'll get into the schedule. I can't wait to hear your thoughts on the schedule. They only gave up 1,436 yards rushing last year. And granted, a lot of those teams were passing teams that they played, high octane offenses in that conference. We know that. But man, so I was like, all right. But they were 25th against the pass. So what does that tell you? Well, the more I dug in, the strength of their defense is up the middle in the front 7. And outside linebackers. Their defensive lineman, Jeffrey Simmons, is their best player on defense, 8.5 sacks, 54 tackles, 6 passes defensed. He made his first Pro Bowl. He's an excellent ascending young player about to finish up his rookie contract. They got a stud. Defensive line, Danico Autry, 9 sacks last year. They like to move him around. So that's the type of defense, if you watch them in the playoffs especially, it's very frenetic. They move their front 7 guys around a lot. They don't do a lot of trickery, but they're able to move around and be very disruptive. They have 2 young nose tackles. They're not huge, but they're very effective. They're good at plugging it up. So they're only like, 6'3", 305. They're not huge, 315. So they're not your big traditional nose tackles, but again, they like to move them around. They're athletic, but they can be moved. And then they're outside linebackers. They got Bud Dupree. Come on, everybody listening and watching should know who. And it's his second year after an ACL. So they got him actually free agency, I think, 2 years ago.
Correct. From Pittsburgh.
He came back last year from the ACL. He finally came back healthy, finished up the season strong, had a sack in the playoffs against Cincinnati. Now this is going to be, so you got Bud Dupree on one side. You got Harold Landry, who had 12 sacks last year. He's their stud young outside linebacker. So you're going to be getting the rush coming around the ends. You got studs up front, very athletic, not huge, but what does that tell you? Great run defense. So the weakness, so here's the answer to your question. The weakness is all 3 inside linebackers are very questionable in coverage. They're good at run support, very questionable in coverage, and they have a very young secondary. The only veteran they had was Jack Rabbit. We Giant fans all know Jack Rabbit. Well, they released him. They didn't re-sign him. They got Caleb Farley, who was the young, exciting corner out of Virginia 2 seasons ago in the draft, who everyone thought was going to go at the top of the draft, and then they found out about his injury and he dropped. So he's in his second year. They got Elijah Molden in his second year, another young defensive back. And then they picked Roger McCreary high in the draft this year. So think about that. What did I just talk about? Very young defensive backs, young corners, also some young safeties, and 3 questionable. So I think the answer, my first 3 plays are power behind the right side. You could go left side too, but that's predictable, I think. Run behind that right side, old Bill Parcells style. You know what? We're going to run it down your throat, and we may only get 3 yards, but go ahead and try to stop us anyway, because I think that's the type of run attack we're going to have on the right side. Play number 2, fake the same exact play. Show them the same look, but use misdirection and get defenders moving. Because remember what I said, it's once you start getting guys moving, and then give that play, whatever it is that they call, should give Daniel options. He can RPO it, or he can do a quick dump to a Wandale, to Shep if he's playing and healthy, to Saquon, because they're putting Saquon out in the flat and they're running him a lot of pre-motion. So I want to see that same play, but then show them something different. And then the third play, I'd say power right side again if it worked, because if it wasn't 3 yards, but it was 6, run it again. Just keep running it. That's how good I think our right side of our line is going to be on run offense. And if not, then attack that second and third level of their defense, inside linebackers, secondary, et cetera. So it's not rocket science for me is my answer, but that's the thought behind it. I had to say all that because it totally didn't make sense given what I've been saying for weeks. Oh, we're just going to run, and yeah, but man, that run. But I think that's how we got to do it. We got to manage the clock and keep Derrick Henry off the field, man.
So this is why Steve and I are good partners to do this show, because when I saw this question, Brian, my first thought, like Steve, was, all right, well, let's take a look at the defense we're talking about here and what we're stacking up. And I'm not going to regurgitate the same stats that Steve did. I saw what he's looking at, and it's funny that we both thought to approach this the same way, but I came at this from a little different approach. And you know, Steve is right that they talked about, all right, let's establish a run game. And I hope they do that. It keeps the offense, the opposing offense off the field. It helps us gel, come together, use all our weapons, so on and so forth. My approach to this when I had to think about this was, well, all right, the talk all season long is going to be, hey, Daniel Jones is our guy. We're going to help him get better. I think part of helping him get better is establishing his confidence. So what I want to see, play number one, is I wanted to see something down the field, middle of the field, maybe. I haven't made up I've been wrestling with this all day. Do I want to see an out, or do I see something up the seam? But I want to see something 15, 20 yards downfield to Kenny Golladay, play one. Get them both clicking early, okay? Second play I want to see is, I want to see a jet sweep with Kadarius Toney right off Evan Neal's butt. So now you get those two in the mix. And then third play, what I want to see is, I want to see Saquon come out of the backfield catching a pass. That's what I want to see early. You get some rhythm. Now, look, we all know it may not work that way, but let's say they pick up that first down in the first play. Let's say Kadarius Toney picks up 8 yards. All right. And I'm just throwing out numbers. And then you hit Saquon out of the backfield for another first down. Now you got the offense feeling good about themselves. You got a little flow going. You got a little rhythm. And now, as the opposing defense, you're looking at this saying, oh, now what are we looking at here? We thought they were going to do this, and now. So, you know what? It's about, for me, it was about, let's get Daniel Jones confident. Let's get some of these weapons that we're talking about, either rookies or second-year players, like as in Toney, who, he saw flashes, but he was hurt. Let's get him in the flow early, so we don't have to go through, well, where's Kadarius Toney? 3-4 games into the season. Right. I think if you get this going early, I think you set the tone for this entire offense going forward. So I understand Steve's thought, and I don't necessarily disagree with it. I just came at it from a different approach, though. So, Brian, now we want to hear what your version is here.
All right, so I'm putting on the headset here, and I'm calling 3 plays. And my first play is going to be a slant pass. No, actually, my first play is going to be a slant pass. We threw a lot of those at Carolina, if you remember, a lot of those short, quick slants, ball out quick type of thing. Mm-hmm. I would put Kadarius Toney out in the slot and just have him do a fast slant route. He's going to be, more than likely, he's going to be faster than the guy that's opposite him, right? So this would be the first time they would have seen Toney on the field, right? So I would want a quick slant, just to get a quick completion. Let's say get 5-7 yards, start as part of getting Daniel in the rhythm early and putting them on notice. Okay, this Toney guy's faster than me. I just found that out on the first play. The second play I would do, along the lines of what you said, Steve, would be a sort of a power run right behind Neal. I'm going right behind Neal. I'm sending Saquon out there, and I want to establish some power running game, and I want to get that big, huge Neal dude just out there, just bulldozing people. I want to see that as a second play. And the third play would be a post route, deep post route with a Golladay. We're going for a 20-25 yard rule.
I like that.
That way they'll have seen, okay, we can throw it short, we can run it on you, and we can make you have to defend deep.
I like what both you guys say. I think I'm wrong and both of you are right. We can start out passing the ball. To me, that'll perfectly open up that tight off box defense they have and open up and start creating holes. And then you loosen it up and you start running. Yeah. My concern is if if they, for example, if they double team Kadarius, which in theory you'd say, oh, they can't double team him, but you never know.
Yeah.
And if it's only a 5-yard slant, if it's only a 5-yard slant, for example, now you're helping the defense because now those inside linebackers that aren't even great in coverage are all zoning and collapsing on him. And if Daniel doesn't get it out quick, you got those 2 outside linebackers. Remember, I talked about them, Harold Landry and Bud Dupree, screaming, especially. Remember what Bud Dupree did to Andrew Thomas's rookie year in Pittsburgh? It wasn't pretty. He's not the same player, Andrew Thomas, but we know what Bud Dupree can do. Those 2 guys screaming around the outside.
Yeah.
And they may be getting some pressure up the middle. You know, Feliciano, we love him right now, but he's not a Pro Bowler. I mean, he's good. But they may try to penetrate up the middle and that pocket could collapse. So I just want to make sure, I guess I was being conservative, but I love what you both say. And I hope I'm wrong and you're right. I would love nothing more than to see that. And then, you know, death by 1,000 blows, right? Just chew up the clock with those tick, 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 and then hit Golladay for a 20-yarder. Oh my God. And he's so tough but I'm just worried about that. Those outside linebackers screaming around the side, man.
No, I get it. Yeah, I guess, you know, don't have too much longer before we'll find out.
Yeah.
What I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
It's fun though, because, you know, Steve, to your point, if we can start hitting a couple passes and you take that defense and you soften that up, and then you just start running Barkley right down their throat, right up the middle between that new, hopefully rebuilt and better offensive line. I mean, you know, they're going to be off balance all game. They're going to be guessing on what the hell we're doing all game long. And you know what? I mean, you're setting yourself up for success. Look, either way this goes, if the running game, Steve, to your point, if they start out on the ground and we're successful, okay, it's all about establishing flow, building confidence, gelling, coming together. Whichever way this goes, as long as they're moving the ball downfield, are any of us going to be unhappy or complaining that we weren't right?
No.
Absolutely not. So
what's going to be fascinating, guys, is you both were talking about Saquon, which I think is so important. But what's going to be fascinating is, you know, we've been talking about this for 3 years now. Oh, look at all the weapons we have. And then we all saw how that played out. But now we have the offensive line, hopefully. So, and they'll take time to perfectly gel. That's why I keep saying the first 3, 4, 5 games, they're going to ease into that playbook. They're not offensive. We all know offensive lines take time, but just the experience, the natural talent of these guys. I mean, it's light years ahead of what we had, at least on paper. I mean, my God.
Yeah.
So what's going to be fascinating is to what you both said about guys like Saquon and Kadarius. If they all of a sudden become the focus for the defenses, how is that going to open up? I mean, Kenny Golladay in single coverage, Bellinger, the rookie at tight end, and we still have Ricky Seals-Jones as a second or third option as a receiver. We have Wandale, the rookie that we're all starting to get excited about. And now you put that little jitterbug out in space, and there'll probably be nobody within 2 yards of him, and then jitterbug. Like, I mean, come on, man. Like now we haven't even talked about Albert Breida.
yeah.
Can you imagine if he's on the field at the same time as Saquon? Or I mean, now you got another guy who can run the hell of the ball out of the backfield. So anyway, it's going to be fascinating to see how defenses decide to focus differently. And then what does our offensive coaching staff say, you know, in response to that?
Yeah. And, you know, Steve, right to that point, because that was something else I was gonna follow up with, was that what I feel better about, what I'm more confident in right now, is that we've got the offensive coaches that are going to exploit the defenses. They're going to find ways to soften these defenses, and they're going to find the holes. I can't tell you the last time I felt that good about any of our offensive coaches, coordinator. So I think you've got to add that into the mix also as well. So, you know, look, I'm anxious to start playing football here,
guys. Final thought on this: all preseason, me personally, I'm just going to be looking to see how we establish that run game. I'm not. I don't want to see anything crazy. I don't want them to show much of the playbook. Most coaches don't. Good coaches would never do that anyway certainly not in the preseason.
Right.
I want to see us start smashing the crap out of linemen, linebackers. I want to see us pound that ball, because if we can do that in the preseason, that foretells what we're going to be able to do and how different of an offense we're going to be over than we were the last 2 to 3 years, where even when we could run the ball, we weren't really running the ball. I mean, I want to see us control that line of scrimmage, and then that gives us options in the passing attack. And
I want to see Parcells running the ball. That's the kind of run.
Yeah, I mean, 2 years ago, Daniel Jones was the leading rusher on the team until the Seattle game.
yeah,
No thanks.
Last year, Daniel Jones was the leading rusher on the team until like the fifth or sixth game.
Hmm,
So that's not a recipe for success.
not at all.
you start getting defenses scared again about Saquon and Kadarius Toney, right? We know what he did in Dallas last year, and now all of a sudden they have to creep and cheat towards that line of scrimmage, and that opens it up for the Gallaudays, like you said, and the go routes and the deeper, that third level of the defense, those deeper crossing patterns, and man,
Oh, the possibilities, huh?
Yeah.
good segue, Carl.
Yeah, good stuff. So, all right, so let's get into it now, guys. We got some time here quickly. So, Brian, what I'll do is I'll go through the schedule. I'll give you the week, all the information. You just tell me what you think, win or loss, okay?
All right, you're not going to hold me to these, right?
No.
They're not going to be
Awful fun.
old takes exposed, old YouTube takes exposed.
All right, so week 1, the game you're going to at Tennessee.
I think we will. They're a better team than us. I think we will show well. I think it will be closer than a lot of Giants fans expect. I think a lot of fans expect that we will just not be competitive in this game. I think we will be competitive, but I think we're probably going to lose that game primarily just because there's an experience differential there, and it's a brand new offense. To your point, Steve, I mean the offensive line is going to take some time to gel. So I think it'll be a close game, but I think the Titans will pull it out.
Week 2, home versus Carolina.
Yeah, we'll win going away.
Wow, going.
They're a mess. They're a mess over there right now.
I like that. Okay. Week 3, Monday night, home for Dallas.
And that will be prefaced by endless stats about Daniel Jones is winless in prime time, to the point where I'm going to be throwing F-bombs on Twitter, listening to all that stuff. That's a tough one.
So, Carl, just to repeat, it's Dallas, it's Monday night, and it's at home.
Yep.
If it were at Dallas, I would say we would lose, but I'm going to go on a limb and say we're going to win that game.
Okay. Interesting. So week 4, home versus the Chicago Bears.
That's a win.
Wow, he said that quick.
Yeah, that's a win.
You notice he doesn't pause. He just shoots it out there.
Bears are a mess. Bears are a mess.
Week 5 in London versus Green Bay.
That will be a loss, I think. Yeah. But I think we'll be more competitive with Green Bay this time than we were like when we played that home game against them, 2 years ago?
I agree with you.
Oh, in the snow, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see your point there. I get that. So week 6, home versus Baltimore after the game in London.
Ugh. I mean, it's probably a loss.
I was just about to say, speak with your head, not with your heart.
Yeah, it's a loss.
All right, here's Steve's favorite game of the schedule. Week 7 at Jacksonville.
We're not losing to Jacksonville. Yeah, we're not losing to Jacksonville.
Steve, I'm not saying a word.
Why is that your favorite game?
He says it sarcastically because he thinks I'm trying to have I'm trying too hard to have a hot take, I think is what he thinks.
He's got a man crush on Trevor Lawrence.
I think that Trevor Lawrence is going to take that third year jump a year early. I think people forget exactly how good he was in college. Like, we're talking Peyton Manning in college was just still playing with kids. I think people forget that's how he was. And I think he's going to figure it out a year ahead of schedule. And I think I made a comment, and here's what I said, Brian. I made a comment a couple weeks ago. I think I'm so excited that Wink's our defensive coordinator. I think we're going to create more turnovers than we ever had. I think that's going to lead to more opportunities for our offense. I think they're going to develop some young defensive players that we've kind of given up on even. But I think a top 15 quarterback, especially top 10 quarterback, is going to tear our secondary, our second and third levels of our defense apart. And I'm worried that he's going to move into that top 15 tier. I think he's that good.
Well, he's also dealing with a very dysfunctional head coach situation over there for most of the season also. So that was
I
not
think they got the right guy there
conducive.
now.
And they fixed all that. They got a coach who knows what it is to play NFC East football, even though he's not going to be in the NFC East. I think they've fixed some of their problems in the offseason. They've solidified that offensive line a little bit. I want us to win. I mean, my God, I hope we win, but I'm worried about that. I think most people look at it exactly the way you did. Oh, it's Jacksonville. Of course, we're going to kill them.
Yeah.
No.
So week 8 at Seattle.
Worst team in one of the worst 2 or 3 teams in football they're going to be this year. Think about that.
Yeah. I think we're going to win.
Week
Not that I was trying to sway you.
No, I got it. Russell isn't there anymore.
week. You guys are killing me tonight. Week 9 is a bye. Week 10 coming off the bye at Houston. No, home for Houston. I apologize. Home for Houston.
That's a win.
You're a very confident lad there, Brian. Week 11, home versus Detroit.
Yeah, that's a win.
Okay, here you go. Week 12, Thanksgiving Day at Dallas.
That's a loss.
Steve, you notice he didn't pause on that one either.
Yeah, that's a loss.
Okay.
Because I've kind of given the Giants the benefit of the doubt on some of these sort of, I don't want to say toss up, but maybe games that you kind of scratch your head and think a little bit, could go either way. So I think it's going to even out. There's going to be some bad days, and that might be one of them.
Yeah, the problem with, we're talking about the Giants here, and there's always that trap game where we all think it's a win, and then and it could be Jacksonville, to Steve's point. But there's always that game on the schedule where we think, all right, we're going to win this one and we're on our way, and then we lay an egg. So
All right, so how many wins am I up to now, Carl?
Oh boy,
7.
too many. 1, 2, 3.
7. Too many.
Yeah, you're right, Steve. 7.
I'm at 7. Okay.
Okay, so week 13, home for Washington.
Win. We should have beaten them. We should have beaten them once last year when we had that game won.
We did.
Right? I still gets my goat that game.
That bogus penalty? Yeah, we should have won that game. Week 14. All right, here comes the fun now. Week 14, home versus Philadelphia.
Ugh.
Here goes the confidence.
Same reaction. Oh.
This depends on how much faith you have in Jalen, right? By that point in the season, the unfortunate thing is that he'll have gone through a lot of the season and got some more experience, and that's at home.
Yes.
I'm gonna say that's a loss.
Like it matters. It's at home. Don't matter. Who gives a crap?
You read my mind. He had to ask it just for the sake of asking, right?
Like a spelling. It's like a spelling bee. How is this word used?
Week 15 at Washington.
Win. So they get to eat it for the year.
Week 16, Christmas Eve at Minnesota. The head drop is priceless, isn't it, Steve?
I love it. This is why this is such a great.
I'm going to say loss.
Week 17, New Year's Day, home for Indianapolis.
Win.
What?
Whoa. And
Wow.
last but not least, Brian, week 18 at Philadelphia.
Oh.
At Philadelphia.
Loss.
You got 10 wins there, man.
Yep. Yep. You got them going 10-7.
Probably a little too
Over here.
optimistic. Probably a little too optimistic.
You know
A
what?
lot of things would have to go our way. We'd have to have a lot, stay free of the injury bug, which has been an issue for us for 3 years, right?
Yeah.
Get a few breaks here and there. Beat some teams we shouldn't.
And beat the ones we should.
And the coaching staff, the new coaching staff is a quick read on how to be the man.
So let me ask you this, Brian. Before we just did this exercise, what were your thoughts about what
9
kind of
wins.
record they were going to have?
9-8.
All right, so I'll give you credit. At least you're following that thinking.
Yeah, 9-8 was kind of my back of the envelope prediction going into the season, not looking at the schedule.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Steve, I got to tell you, I love ending every show with that. I have a ball with that.
Yeah, me too. Me too. It's
That was a little intimidating because I didn't know we were going to be doing that till right before we went live, and I was like, "Oh, okay, all right, let's go."
I think it's also funny because if you really can get someone to step away mentally from their, oh, but I'm trying to remember how many wins did I say they're going to have this year?
Yeah.
Because people tend to have, I think when you say how many wins in a season for an NFL team, real NFL fans attach an image of how good of a team that is or isn't. I think people have already they're afraid to say how good we are. They're trying to, hedge their bets. And I don't want to say we're going to have too many wins because, that's saying we're going to be this. And then you start going through this. So if you can get someone, as Brian just did, to just forget about that and just focus on the games, and then you finish and go, so you got us winning 10 games. So, oh, really? It's a fun exercise.
And you know what the trap is in there is that as you're going through these games, you think historically this team is bad. We're going to beat them. We should always beat them. We're going to beat them. This team always loses. And it never always works like that. But I mean, it's hard to step outside of that train of thought and that way of thinking. I know I had to do it a couple times. So
it's why they play the games, though, right? We always say
every
that.
given Sunday, right? To your point, Steve, exactly right. So
and if it breaks that way, then if it is 10 wins, that's a good chance for that's a wild card team, right? Because I predicted a fair amount of NFC East losses. So either the NFC East is going to be brutal again, or and we have a shot at a division title, or that 10 wins, you're in contention for a wild card, right?
if you think about it, guys, if the schedule is breaking the way Brian just laid it out, that last game against Philadelphia is going to be huge because you got to figure them to have at least 10 wins, 9 or 10 wins as well, right? So that's the team that I expect most to come out of the division. So if that's the case, my God, that game is going to be huge.
It would be, yeah.
Holy smokes!
And MetLife would be cooking for that game.
Yeah.
Oof.
I still think I think it's possible that final 3 games of the season we could be looking down the barrel of a potential wild card, at least, if not the division. Well, let's just say division, because we're probably going to still have the worst division in football, probably, unless Carson Wentz goes to Washington with an improved receiving core, to be fair, but probably a worse offensive line than they've had because they lost Brandon Sheriff.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, they turned over a couple spots on offensive line. And if he goes to Washington and absolutely kills it, I mean, it's possible. He had that one amazing year in Philadelphia. And statistically, he was actually pretty good in Indianapolis for a lot of the year last year, if you look statistically. Maybe they end up having it, and maybe Dak bounces back healthy and has another good year. Like, the division could be good, but if it ends up being the worst division in football, like a lot of people think it will be again, those final 3 games, if we're looking at 8 wins, and then, man, all we need is to get to, let's say, 9.
Well, even in 2019, I mean, if Evan Ingram catches that pass, they won a division in 2019, Jones's rookie year, right? So,
and I think that's what gives you hope as you look at the last 2 years when we were 6 wins, and you're like, man, look how close some of these games were, and yet look how bad we were.
I'll tell you though, think about it. Giants are 9-7 going into Philadelphia last game of the, that's a huge ask for a young team with a lot of rookies to go into that stadium and win a game that they may need as much as we will.
yeah.
Holy smoke. I'll tell you, it's nice to think that that possibility exists for that game to even have that meaning. Wow. What a game that would be.
I was thinking, Brian, of the schedule and what the responses that you were giving, and I think you had to think about Indianapolis. And what did you do? You said Indianapolis. I think you said it's a loss, right?
I think I said a win.
He said a
Yeah,
win.
I think you're the only fan so far to say win. Carl, I could be wrong. I think he's the first person to say win.
I think you're right, Steve.
And it's like that offense was built for Matt Ryan. By all accounts, he's having a great offseason. He's looking like old Matty Ice. He doesn't have any arm left really, but he's on the back 9 of his career, but he's looking good. He's probably the perfect quarterback to drop into that off.
Mm-hmm.
But we're talking about health, and it's like, you know what? If that, God forbid, I mean, I don't wish this on anybody, but if that all-pro running back goes down, I don't know who their backups are. I don't know that it'll be the same. They lost Glowinski. They're starting one of their second best starting offensive lineman.
Yeah.
Behind Quentin Nelson. So, like, who's to say Indianapolis will be as strong as you would think they're going to be? Like, that's why they play the games. So,
Guys, a lot of fun tonight as always. Brian, you were great. You brought a little humor to the show tonight, Brian, which we appreciated. And Steve, always a pleasure. Always look forward to doing this together with you, Steve. So, everybody, thank you so much. Brian, again, we appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming
Thank
by.
you.
And
Absolutely.
guys, again, please keep up with the subscriptions on the YouTube channel and the 5-star ratings and the downloads as well on the podcasts. We really appreciate all your support, and have a good night. We'll see you all next week, guys. Thank you, guys. Take care. Have a good
Thank
one.
you.